Hey, I want to tell you about something that I got in the mail the other day. Actually, it was about a week or two ago. This is King Lear, directed by Jean-Luc Godard. It was a 1987 release, and it's going to be issued by the Criterion Collection in February of 2025. So it's about 2 Tuesdays from now, I think, is when it'll come out. And let me tell you about my thought process about why I requested this film for review. I'm a big fan of Jean-Luc Godard. At least I really appreciate his 60s work. It was promoted to me as very influential and kind of, one of the intellectual giants, if you will, of the Nouvelle Vague and of 20th century cinema. A guy who really passionately believed in and experimented with the power of the filmed image and editing techniques, narrative, just playing with cinematic conventions and creating his own very distinctive style. So yeah, I've done podcasts about that. I've written about those films. I have a lot of love for him. I even went into some of his early 70s stuff with the Ziga Vertov group. Did a podcast about that. Did that a few years ago with my friend John Lobinger. And it's a good series, worth looking up. But in any case, when Criterion announced that this would be coming out, I made that my choice for the month of February to see if they would choose to send me a review copy, and they did. So I was pretty delighted to receive this. So what is this movie? Well, Jean-Luc Godard, I've said a little bit about him. King Lear, of course, one of the famous late plays of William Shakespeare. It's a story that's, kind of reflecting on old age and the passing on of one's legacy and the futility of pomp and vanity and, an unwillingness to let go in the right kind of way when one's mortal time starts drawing to its inevitable conclusion. So I thought, well, okay, so Godard's getting a little bit older here, so maybe he's got some things to say about the aging process. This is 1987, of course. He had kind of made himself famous nearly 30 years earlier in Breathless and with all the stuff that he did with Anna Karenina throughout the 60s, kind of being the heart of his ongoing reputation. But then I said, let's look at the cast here. So you've got Molly Ringwald as Cordelia, the king's daughter. She is the good one, but she's the one who doesn't flatter the king. There's Goneril and there's Regan, and they both are very obsequious in praising their father, and of course they get a big share of his estate. But Cordelia is quiet but true, but she displeases her father, and he disinherits her, and the plot is kicked into motion. That all happens in Act 1, Scene 1, I believe. It's right at the beginning of the story. So I thought, okay, well, Molly Ringwald meets Jean-Luc Godard. And then I heard Burgess Meredith. He was the guy who plays, in this version, Don Liaro. He's like a gangster, organized crime figure. So, okay. Burgess Meredith, of course, in my estimation, was the Penguin in my childhood favorite TV series, Batman, the 66 version. And Norman Mailer makes an appearance. I've had kind of a unique love-hate relationship with Norman Mailer and his films over the years. And there's an appearance of a very young Julie Delpy. This is prior to the Before trilogy, or even, Three Colors White. Leos Carax, a talented French filmmaker. He's also very young in his appearance here. And there's a surprise cameo from Woody Allen that isn't advertised in the credits, but he makes a very strategic appearance towards the end of the film. So, yeah, so all the ingredients are here for something kind of fun and memorable and Godardian, right? And this definitely is a very Godardian treatment of a historic and famous subject. But other than that little bit I talked to you about with Cordelia and Lear, the rest of the play is kind of dismissed and towards some other objective. Now, this movie, I just watched it for the first time last night. It came to me with a warning from one of my best online film friends, Richard Doyle, who lividly detests this film. He hates it. He thinks it's just utterly terrible and probably not very fond feelings for Jean-Luc Godard, almost maybe because of this movie and maybe because of other things. I've never really talked Godard with Richard, so I don't really know the whole story. Shouldn't speak for him. But I know for a fact he does not like King Lear. I want to read to you something that Richard Brody wrote in the essay. So I'm going to have to search for it a minute here. Yeah, this is the opening line of Richard Brody's essay. After the End of the World is what he titles it. Jean-Luc Godard's King Lear is the closest thing there is to a total film. It's an adaptation that dramatizes the nature and even the possibility of adaptation. It's a movie about the world of filmmaking that explicitly considers the conditions under which it was made and its own place in the art, and for that matter, Godard's. I want to get to some of the more hyperbolic stuff here. Yeah, here Godard reconceives the basic principles of filmmaking at every level, from the composition of images and the building of a soundtrack to the development of a story, the imagining of characters and the unfolding of a narrative, from the selection of a cast and the performances of actors to the purpose and the power of editing. King Lear has the impulsive freedom and spontaneity of jazz, the contrapuntal intricacy and precision of classical music. The very elements of light and sound are as vividly expressive as if they were characters on their own. Well, those are some pretty lofty claims, and I will say that maybe the average film goer won't walk out of this screening with the same words in mind. Okay. Richard Brody's a unique character. He's a great student of Godard. He wrote this book, Everything is Cinema, The Working Life of Jean-Luc Godard. So it's a pretty thick biographical work, which I think only goes up into the early 2000s maybe. I'm not really sure where it leaves off, but it certainly covers this period, which is the end of the 1980s, which is kind of the culmination of a distinct phase of Godard's career, which I have captured in a few discs that I own. So this was Criterion's disc from, well, a 1980 release that came out in 2015, Every Man for Himself, which kind of marks Godard's return to more commercially mainstream filmmaking, although with heavy qualifications on that. I've had this disc set. This is a 3-disc set. It's 4 films: Passion, First Name Carmen, Detective, and Oh Woe Is Me. And those first 3, Passion, First Name Carmen, and Detective, all came in between Every Man for Himself and King Lear, as did probably his most famous, at least from my memory, my impression, his controversial film from 1985, Hail Mary, which takes on the subject of Mary as the mother of Jesus and was kind of denounced for blasphemy or sacrilege or some such concerns. And, also marks the premiere, or I think it was the first feature performance of Juliette Binoche. So it's another very remarkable discovery, as Godard also discovered Julie Delpy in his film Detective. So I'm going to go on a little bit of a journey to kind of fill in my knowledge of Godard in the 80s with these films. Again, Every Man for Himself, the Studio Canal collection here, Hail Mary, and I'm going to give King Lear a rewatch. All right? So this is my homework so that I can give a better explanation of what Godard is up to in King Lear by understanding how he reinvents the very grammatical foundation of cinema in this most, complex and complete film of all time. As Richard Brody somewhat hyperbolically describes it, he also gives a video interview where he is at that same high stratosphere of praise for what Godard accomplished in these films. So I'm not sure I'm going to wind up there, and I certainly don't feel I'm anywhere close to that after watching King Lear once. I did find things to enjoy about it. It did intrigue me, and it drew me in to say, let's give this another watch and maybe get a better grasp of where he's going with this. It can feel very disjointed, meandering. There's some inside jokes. Maybe Godard is amusing himself more than he's interested in amusing his viewers. But as always, there's a great intelligence at work there, and these films give us an opportunity to engage with him at that level. And so I'm going to be up for the challenge by tackling Godard in the 80s. Maybe I'll see if I can find some of the missing pieces in between these two before I get back to you with my full report.